You can probably recognize the sound of fire crackling in that little bit of audio. That was actually from my campfire last night. I took myself camping out in the woods and built myself a little fire and enjoyed it all by myself as night fell around me. Today, we are getting into the real stuff about the hardships and the magic of living full time in a tiny house on wheels. I am Traveling Jackie, and you are listening to Jump Podcast. Thank you for being here today. At the time of recording this episode, it is currently September of 2024, and just over a year ago, I published my first episode about living in my truck camper, and I bought that truck camper in June of 2023 and began living in it full-time immediately because I'd already been without a house for several months by that point. And that episode, which if you want to go back and listen to it, it was number 167, tells the story of why I got a truck camper and what I had to do to my truck, my Toyota Tacoma, to make it work logistically, like suspension wise and to support the weight and all of that. And I also shared what I had learned so far up to that point, which was a lot. At the very beginning, it felt like drinking from a fire hose. There was just so much to learn about the systems of the camper. And it was at the same time very empowering and very overwhelming and also very fun because I was super stoked about the whole process. So that was over a year ago now. And I wanted to revisit the subject now that I have a much fuller experience, a much fuller perspective with living in my truck camper, and just to reflect on the last year, the ups, the downs, and the real hard stuff about it and the good stuff, all of it. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you a quick recap of what led me to getting the camper in the first place and what I had planned to do with it. And then I'll share what I actually have done with it and how and where I spent my winter, the hardest parts about full-time truck camper living, which honestly are not what you think. And I say that because they are not what I thought that they would be either. And then ultimately, I'll wrap up with where I am now and what's next for my truck camper plans. So yeah, welcome to my latest solo episode. Thanks for being here today. We're so grateful to Osprey Packs for partnering with us and supporting the podcast. So please stay tuned for more about them later on. I have an opportunity for you to join me in real life for some real travel. Here's the latest Jump Adventures update. We are going to Greece for a bike and boat island hopping adventure this May 9th to 16th, 2025, and we still have space left. Check out jumpadventures.com to learn more and book now. We're going to have a yacht all to ourselves with ensuite cabins on board, so you get to sleep in the same bed every night as we start in Athens and make our way west toward the island of Corfu. You'll have your own bike for the week, e-bike if you want one, for cycling the islands as we go, in between meals crafted by our private chef on board, and all the relaxing you want to do on the top deck under the Mediterranean sun. These bike and boat adventures are our most carefree and relaxed trips. All you have to do is say yes and show up, and there's still space. Head over to jumpadventures.com to grab your spot now, and we'll see you there. We're going to just go ahead and get right into it. So going back a bit, what led me to getting the camper in the first place, there were actually several things, but I'll just bullet point these for you real quick, is one, I had been living in the same place or renting the same place for the past 4 years before that. And my landlords were turning it into an Airbnb. And so I actually had to move out of the place that I called home. And so that was the first impetus of actually leaving and packing up and being available to live anywhere. The other thing that was in the works is that even a year or so before that, I had this feeling that a big change was coming for me. And I don't know if it was directly related to the fact that at the exact same time, I had become very interested in actually looking at truck campers. I mean, being nomadic is something I've done before. Living on the road out of a car is not something I have done before, but it's always sort of been there for me, this idea. And I mean, I have a truck. I've always had a truck. And so it's always sort of been an idea for me. But it was about 3 years ago now that I started having these real ideas of actually researching truck campers and just feeling like, this is something I could do. Not necessarily, I wasn't thinking of doing it full time and not having a house. But it had crossed my mind as an option for me that seemed to be very fitting for my lifestyle. I mean, as a traveler, this is just another form of travel. And so these things were happening kind of under the surface leading up to this point where I ended up having to actually move out of my house. And so everything kind of came to the right point of, you know what, this is the time to do it. It was like the peak of the market. And so I don't know if you guys experienced the rise in all of the real estate and rentals where you are, but it's been ridiculous in Montana. And so at that time, it made more sense to me for me to actually buy a camper and save the money on rent than it did to rent a house for the next year. And so that's what I decided to do. I decided to forego renting a place for a year and put that money into investing in a truck camper instead. That's essentially what I did. And so I had ordered it in March of 2023 after doing a bunch of research and realizing that my options were actually pretty limited because I only have a 5-foot bed on my Toyota Tacoma. And so with only limited options for getting a camper that would actually fit my truck appropriately, I chose one. It's a 4-wheel camper Swift. It is the most adorable thing you ever did see. It's amazing. I custom built it. So, I added a bunch of custom options is what I should say. So it has like a couch space that actually rolls over and forms an extra bed. It has a bed that's above the cab. So my bed is above the cab. There's also a sink and hot water. There's an outdoor shower. There's a stove, a 2-burner stove. There's propane for the stove. There's also propane, forced heat, thermostat. There's ceiling fans. There's solar. I've got a lithium battery. So yeah, I pretty much stocked the thing and made it so that I would be able to live in it full time easily. Like I had the amenities I needed to actually make this work, to be able to cook, to be able to stay warm, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing that I did was do a ton of research on figuring out which bike rack, because biking, being active is important to me. And so I did a bunch of research until I figured out how to get the right bike rack to like swing away and set up right on my truck so that I could have my bikes with me as I travel. And I also added a set of steps on the outside. Actually, in case you guys are interested, the steps are from Torque Lift. That's the name of the company. And the bike racks that I ended up getting, there's 2 parts to it. There's a swing arm and then there's the tray bike rack, and they're both from Kuat. And I love them. I cannot speak highly enough about them. And they give me just enough clearance to get into the doors. It's been the perfect setup for me. And the other thing that I did was get Starlink because I need to work from the road. And so I did a bunch of research about that because you can't just get Starlink and plug it into anything. It's very, very thirsty. And so I had to buy a power station as well, which essentially is a giant battery that can power a Starlink, and that's from EcoFlow. And so all of this took a lot of research and a lot of learning of systems, but it set me up really, really well for what I wanted to do. So yeah, if you are interested to see what it looks like, my 4-wheel camper Swift, which is a slide-in pop-up camper, by the way, it is all over my Instagram, so you can go check out at Traveling Jackie. It's also on the blog at travelingjackie.com. And so you can see pictures if you're interested in nerding out with me about suspension and bike racks. There's stuff on my blog about that. And some of the stuff you're going to hear today in this episode is also reflected on the blog. So all of that's at travelingjackie.com if you're interested. But yeah, so I really tricked it out. My little camper, it's amazing. I'm very proud of it. And it was my cozy little home for about a year. It was more than a year that I didn't have a house, that I was dependent solely on living out of my truck, which was It almost makes me tired even just to think about it right now, which is kind of funny because it was a lot of work. But oh my goodness, like if you like camping and being outside, I love to be outside. And so to live life so much outside, I really, really loved it. And as I said, I'm going to tell you what I did for winter, because that obviously is not conducive. Montana is not conducive to living in a camper during the winter time. So that is definitely not what I did. But yeah, as we get into this, I'm actually going to share some numbers with you first because I didn't live for 12 months in a row full time out of the camper. I mean, I still travel, I'm still traveling, Jackie, still have jump adventures. I was doing a bunch of trips in between, but it ended up being collectively 8 months that I was full time every single day in the camper, over the course of about 14 or 13 months where I was taking trips here and there. And in the in between, I was living out of my camper. That began in Montana last summer. And I was actually in my camper when I recorded the last episode, the 167 episode where I was explaining everything about the camper in the first place. But that was a really successful time. Living in a camper in Montana in the summertime was pretty glorious. I found a spot in the woods that I would kind of post up in, and I spent a lot of nights up there, and it worked really well until it started getting cold. And my original plan was to actually take my camper down to Baja this winter. I had a group trip that we did in February in Baja for Jump Adventures. And my idea was to take my truck down there and be down there and lead the trip and then come back up. But I'll cut to this chase for a lot of reasons, but mainly it was just a gut feeling. It was not the time to do that this year. I was really struggling with the idea of not playing ice hockey. We all have our things, right? I love ice hockey, you guys. I play a lot of ice hockey when I'm here in Montana. And if I'm not, able to play hockey, I'm mountain biking, I'm running, like I need a lot of trails. And I wasn't seeing the activity, the physical activity as being enough if I were spending my season down in Baja. It's different there. The trails are different. The desert is really, really wild. And you can get lost easily, and there's not a lot of trails. There's not trail systems, And so I started thinking differently and kind of researching other ideas. And I ended up choosing to go to Arizona instead. So I kind of narrowed in on the Scottsdale area because for a multitude of reasons. One, I knew people there. And so I knew I would have friends that I could lean on if I needed to. And that's not even counting the people that I met down there, which was just so cool. I ended up having such a good time. But so I knew that I had contacts there that I could lean on if I needed to, and to just, be around community. Like people are important to me. And so I wanted to be somewhere where I could have some of my people. So Scottsdale area had that. It had, what I could see from my research, plenty of options for dispersed camping, which is what I was looking for. There are endless trails. I mean, these trails, you guys, they're like freaking perfect. So amazing. So many running and biking trails down there. So I was stoked on that. And cherry on top, they have multiple ice rinks down there. And I researched adult ice hockey pickup games before I even went. So I actually changed my plan. I had packed up my truck and left Montana at the end of October. And I actually had a trip to Patagonia. I was in Patagonia for like 5 or 6 weeks, November and December last year. And when I came back, I actually came back to Montana and repacked my truck. I ditched the gravel bike and I kept the mountain bike, and I got my hockey gear. And I was so excited, you guys, to come back and get my ice hockey gear. I was like, I was just so stoked that I didn't have to leave behind ice hockey for a whole season. So I went to Arizona with my mountain bike and my ice hockey gear in tow, and I figured it out. I ended up finding a sweet little dispersed camping area that had a vault toilet, like a bathroom it wasn't anything fancy, but hey, it was a toilet that was pretty close by. It was free to stay there. It was close enough to, it was about a half-hour drive from the ice rink, and it was a minimum half hour. That, if you've ever been to the Phoenix area, it's huge. You can drive for an hour and still be in the city. So yeah, I felt like a 30-minute drive to civilization, like where I needed to be to get groceries and everything, was actually pretty decent. It's the same as it was here in Montana, like where I was camping was about 30 minutes outside of town. So I was used to that. And so it ended up being a really incredible place for me to set up for the winter. And I mean, I understand now. I understand why there are snowbirds who live in the north in the summertime and they go south in the wintertime. I mean, I could be one of those people, although now I'm back in Montana, but c'est la vie. But yeah, last winter, it was a really, really great place for me to sort of land and explore and, be with my truck. And I did end up flying down for that trip to Baja, and it was amazing. But yeah, Phoenix became my airport for a few months, which was also super interesting to navigate. But I really enjoyed, having the sun and the dry trails was a massively positively impactful part of my winter, because now I'm going to get into the real deep stuff, the hard stuff, and the magic that I had no idea would surface in my journey of owning a truck camper. And I'm going to start right out of the gates with the hardest part, the really, really hard stuff. That way we can end with the warm fuzzies, because there were plenty of those as well. I'm going to preface with saying that I think that there are a lot of really easily imaginable hard things that would come with living full-time out of any vehicle, right? And these are things that I think you can imagine right now as well. The fact that my camper doesn't have a bathroom, the fact that there's no laundry machine, the fact that it kind of sways in the breeze and you can hear a lot of things that are going on outside and you're maybe not sleeping well. How about the fact that you don't maybe know where you're sleeping every night? Like, there are things that you could put into a list of, but these are easily imaginable. This is the stuff you kind of go into knowing, like, all right, this is the adventure that I'm choosing and I know it's going to be hard and we're going to get through this. The royal we, like, we're going to get through this, me and my stuffed animal, we're going to get through this. But what I'm about to touch on is really the hard part that I never saw coming. And I'm going to kind of paint a picture for you right now. I don't know if you've ever heard of, you probably have, but there is a thing called Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of needs. In psychology, this is basically a thing in psychology. It's like a pyramid of human needs. It basically visualizes what we need to succeed as humans. And at the very, very bottom, the very base, like the foundation of the pyramid, are physiological needs. So this includes food, water, warmth, rest. And the very next one is safety. That's your security, your safety. And these two together make up your basic needs. If you want to see a picture of this, there is one on my blog, or you can Google Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of needs, because it really helps to just visualize like how we succeed as humans, what we need, what our basic needs are. And then once those are met, what comes next? And what comes next after the basic needs are the psychological needs. So this is like belongingness and love. These are relationships, friends, and then esteem is on top of that. So prestige and feeling of accomplishment. And if you have all of these things, then you can operate from the top of the pyramid, which is self-fulfillment, which is self-actualization. So this is achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. This is you being you. This is you putting your best foot forward and actually fulfilling what you believe you're here to do, etc. Okay. And I love this because what actually happened while I was living out of my truck was in one fell swoop. I did not realize I was doing this, but in one fell swoop, I totally eliminated the bottom of the pyramid. I just knocked it right out. And I'm laughing because otherwise I would cry. It's like one of those things. I actually have spent plenty of time doing that this year, but yeah. So our most basic needs are for physical survival, right? And this is the foundation from which we operate. And so food, water, shelter. Yeah. I never once considered how hard it would be to fulfill my basic human needs every single day while simultaneously trying to operate from the top of the pyramid because I have a business to run, and I'm trying to keep up my active lifestyle. I have lots of things that I do during the day. I have friendships. I've got relationships. I've got a lot of things going. And there was a ton of stuff I was doing for my work during this whole season. And so I really needed to be operating at the top of that pyramid. And here I am completely wiping out the bottom of it. When you have a house that comes with running water and a fridge and a freezer and a pantry, then aside from meal planning or prepping, you don't need to seek your basic needs of food, water, and shelter, nor the safety and stability that your solid home with lockable doors provides every single day. In fact, I think that the average person with a home most likely takes these things entirely for granted. But this is not the case when you're living in a truck camper. There were only a handful of times over the entire past year that I ever stayed in the same camp spot without leaving during the day. Like I still had a life. I wasn't just blissfully camping for months on end, right? Which means that even if I was able to set up in the exact same spot or somewhere nearby each night, I still had to think about where I was sleeping that night with a plan B always at the ready, just always. Or I'd have to figure it out like in the dark or whatever when it came time, if there wasn't room where I was going. If you've ever been a long-term overlander or a vehicle-based nomad, you know this feeling and you know it can start to weigh really heavily. It's a stress that most people with homes just don't ever have to think about. And for the record, living out of a vehicle is entirely different from traveling nomadically, which I have spent many years doing. Nomadic travel still includes beds to sleep in, usually inside buildings that also come with running water, sometimes even warm water and electricity and just a certain sense of safety. Though I also believe that nomadism wears on you in a totally different way. But here's what it looked like to actually live in my truck camper and handle this. So my water tank holds 20 gallons. And when it runs out, I was at the mercy of finding a spigot with a potable water that attaches to and is reachable by my 25-foot hose. And so that was where I was super grateful to friends who let me fill up at their houses along the way. I got used to filling up all of my water bottles at the gym or the hockey rink. And in a pinch, I'd have to buy jugs of water from the store, which I really didn't like doing because plastic. And though I do have a fridge in the camper, it is smaller than a milk crate. And the freezer, to my everlasting frustration, doesn't even fit a pint of Ben & Jerry's. And also the kitchen is only accessible when the camper is actually popped up. And so during any given day, my camper's popped down if I'm out, if I'm doing things like I don't have access to actually use my stove during the day. And so I had to get very creative with meals and food storage. And also for the first time ever, really like considering the trash and the packaging that the food comes in, because who has room for that when you live in a shoebox, right? We'll come right back to that. Let's take a moment now to thank our wonderful show sponsors. Osprey is the market leader in technical outdoor, travel, and everyday packs. And I've personally used Osprey packs since 2015. My favorites are the Fairview Trek 50 for multi-day hikes, the Cirrus 24 for day hikes, the Transporter Rolling Duffel 60, which is my trusty check luggage for faraway adventures, and of course, the countless packing cubes I use to organize everything that goes in them. We are proud to support each other on the podcast and beyond. We love getting outside, and we want to see more people outdoors. So find out more and join us at osprey.com. And this often resulted in daily trips to the store for fresh items. I ended up keeping Mexican ingredients stocked because they're super simple and versatile. Definitely a pro tip. Also I love Mexican food, but cans of beans. I used cans of shredded chicken from Costco with corn tortillas, salsa, stuff like that. You could whip up any kind, like so many different kinds of meals for breakfast, for dinner, whatever. And so I ended up doing that a lot. But you know what was super unfortunate? I also discovered that for how active I am, I was running, mountain biking, playing hockey, still doing my normal things, even though I was living out of a truck camper. I have talked before on this podcast about bringing the things with you that feel like home, not changing who you are just because you're traveling. And for me, part of that is being super active. And so of course I'm going to do that when I'm on the road. But the thing that I discovered was that I was not getting enough calories or protein. Like I actually was not eating enough with my camper kitchen diet. And so I was hungry a lot. Like it's like so sad to say that, but I just wasn't eating enough food. And it just, honestly, that even made me sad because it felt like everything with the camper. I mean, there was just so much work. There was so much high demand of things that had to be done in order to pop up, pop down, set up, set down, just even trying to do yoga out in the desert. I mean, everything was just extra hard. Like everything was just a challenge. And so I was sad that, I'm not a great cook anyway. Like I don't really love being in the kitchen. I don't love cooking. And all of that was just exacerbated with the camper because it's like food is hard enough anyway. And now I'm just hungry. I'm like not eating enough. And like, I don't know. I'm not good at organizing and managing a kitchen. And so that was a real big challenge for me. And yeah, that's one of the things at the very base of the pyramid. It took a lot of time and energy that I was wholly unprepared to give just to meet these basic needs of food and water and shelter and safety every day, especially while I was trying to run my business. As I mentioned, I did use Starlink for internet while off grid, and it worked really well most of the time, but there were times that I just couldn't get enough signal to hold a call or, for example, record a podcast conversation without dropping it. And honestly, you guys, it's so frustrating. Like, because these things happen every single day, and so it's just like a compounding frustration when all of these things is just day after day after day. This is your life full time. Setting up Starlink and breaking it down also took time and energy, not to mention battery life from that EcoFlow power station that I mentioned. I had to ration my battery life for my Starlink. So I couldn't just like hang out in my camper at night watching hockey or whatever like I wanted to do. It was like, okay, when I'm done working for the day, I need to turn this off so I can save the battery because the battery was something that I ended up needing to charge at friends' houses. Like, yes, I could charge it off of my truck battery while I was driving, but I just wasn't spending enough time driving to get a good charge out of it. And so every now and then I would take it inside and it charges in an hour. And so I was definitely visiting those friends, different friends to charge things, to fill water, all sorts of things that just you can add to a long list of irregular hardships. This past year has been a season of change, big changes for me, not just in my personal and my home life, living on the road, etc., but also in my work life. And that's the part where maybe you noticed due to the lack of podcast episodes. There was just a lot going on for me behind the scenes with work. And in order to try to balance that, I was seeking out mountain bike trails and ice hockey pickup games just to, try to let go of some of the stress and the constant full on work and energy that I was putting into this lifestyle. I was balancing it with, going to or the gym, just getting a shower. I was I had a gym membership and I was showering at the ice rink. And sometimes at the mountain bike trails, sometimes they had showers in their bathrooms. And so, yeah, it was it was all consuming. It was all exhausting. And at any time of day, I couldn't just rest because I literally had no place to, because my roof was popped down. You can't even sit inside in the back. It's too small. You can't even sit up unless it's all set up. And so I didn't even have any place to just rest. Like during any day when I popped down and went to do anything, whether it was just going for a bike ride or going to get groceries, like I couldn't, it was like all motion, all movement until I was back to be in for the night to pop back up. And like I kind of mentioned at the beginning, like all of these things, talking about the hierarchy of needs and all of that, it doesn't even broach the subject of the list of things that were difficult every day, like not having a bathroom or being a solo female, sleeping alone in the wild, or just over here weathering storms that literally shake my bed at night, But in the end, we have to remember that I did choose this adventure. I did choose it. And I reminded myself of that all the time. Like, this was the adventure that I signed up for. And luckily for me and all of us who choose these difficult adventures in our lives, there's a really, really good side, right? Like, there's definitely magic that comes with an adventure like this. And that is what I'm going to get into now. There are truly so many wonderful, best things about living full time in a truck camper. One of my top favorites being drinking coffee in nature with the birds in the morning. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. But there's one thing that stands out above the rest, and it can be summed up in a word that I have used multiple times when talking about this truck camper living adventure, and that is empowerment. I am and always have been all about courage, about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, about lighting a torch and marching straight into the darkness, into the unknown, discovering what's there and how I can learn and grow from it. And you know what? Courage is a one-way trip. Once you take the leap, you never really go back. You can never undo, unsee, unlearn the life lessons that you've earned through any given experience. You do not go back to who you were. You only go forward. There are some things in life that just stretch us. They just catapult us straight out of our comfort zones and force us to develop new muscles and explore uncharted territory. And sometimes we get to choose that territory and sometimes we don't. Living full-time on the road is one of these uncharted territories. And I know that I chose this, like I said. Not only have I quite exhaustively learned how to use a truck camper, like I mentioned, including, navigating a water pump and tank, or winterizing the pipes, or using my air compressor, or tightening the anchors and tie downs, or maybe just managing the battery life and monitoring the air in my tires and using solar electricity versus shore power versus power station power, or maintaining my propane tank levels, or adjusting the airbag suspension PSI, just all the stuff like that. I mean, these are really languages I never spoke before, but aside from all that, I've also, jumped vehicles and installed tiny shelves into my camper and configured solar energy storage and built campfires and navigated laundromats and different gyms and explored new cities and mountain bike trails and hockey rinks and seen so many friends I wouldn't normally get to see and just wake up in nature day after day after day. And you know what? I have done this all on my own. And this is where I feel like it gets kind of personal, but also just really powerful. I have recognized a wild thing that has happened to me as a result of doing so many things solo in my life. And that is that in many ways, I have filled in for my other half. I have this book about dreams, and I was reading in it the other day, and I'm going to read a little excerpt from it for you because this really stood out to me. It says, "Believe it or not, we sometimes discover our whole self once we go through a separation or divorce because we are forced to. Certain built-in qualities and skills become idle when our other half is handling some of the work." And normally we use the phrase other half to reference a partner, right? But since I was 18 when I first left the country alone to study abroad, I have been practicing being solo. And just because I'm solo doesn't mean I'm not going. I am feeling the fear and I'm doing it anyway. This is just what I do, right? I cannot depend on anyone else to fulfill my dreams for me, nor can I depend on anyone else to take care of the things that I simply don't want to take care of that accompany dream territory. If I want to make my dreams come true, it's up to me. And trust me, learning about vehicle suspension and the inner workings of a truck camper and actually being solely responsible for keeping everything working and fixing things when they're not working, these things were not only not high on my list, they also terrified me. They terrified me. Doing all of this by myself was my single biggest fear about signing up for this whole adventure in the first place. But I know as well as anyone that fear always comes with the territory of big dreams. And I also know from experience that on the other side of fear is reward. And so to me, that means either buck up and learn, harness that courage, face that fear, empower myself and get through it, or change course entirely. Gee, what do you think I'm going to do? Jackie being Jackie and insisting on doing all the things that I do solo, because often that's my only choice, has helped me learn and hone skills that I think a lot of people just don't bother to develop simply because they don't have to. And I'm not just talking about specific gender skills because I'm a woman. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about everything from mental strength to personal confidence to handy skills and beyond. These are human learnings, and every piece of that learning that becomes skill then has potential to become habit, then becomes confidence and courage, and ultimately makes me feel more whole and capable in this human experience. What? Like, who knew I was signing up for all of that when I said I wanted to buy a truck camper, right? Learning all of these things and adding so much to my experience and doing it all on my own, that is empowerment. And no one can ever take that away from me. That is the magic. That is the magic. And that magic is something you can't order on a pretty list for your custom camper build. You have to choose to show up and believe in discovering for yourself what the adventure has in store for you. So despite all of the hardship and the struggle over the past year, I am absolutely blown away by what the adventure has had so far in store for me. I will take empowerment any day and consider it a reward well earned through days of my life, a year of my life well spent. So there you have it. That is the very, very hard and the very, very magic of what I've learned in this past year. And come full circle now, I am actually, like I mentioned, I'm living in a house again. I am back in Bozeman, and I'm so happy about it because I went through enough to be able to choose with a very clear mind that yes, it's time for me to live in a house again for a lot of reasons. I didn't want to just do it because it's what everyone does, right? I didn't want to just like go rent a house again because it's the normal thing to do. Normal is not a trail marker in the wilderness. It's not a trail marker in my wilderness. And so I wanted to know exactly why I was choosing what I always want to do this in my life. Like I want to know why I'm choosing to do with my life, what I'm doing with it. There's got to be a reason behind it. I don't want to just default into what someone else thinks. I want to design. I want to live my life by design, my personal life, my work life, all of it. I want to question everything so that I can feel that my choices are indeed creating the one and only life that actually looks like me, the one life that I actually want to live. So I am choosing to live in a house right now for very specific reasons. And I know exactly what those are because I went out and learned them the hard way. And right now I feel immense value in having a solid home base that doesn't sway in the breeze or require putting away before going to get groceries. And I also feel immense value in having a personal escape pod to whisk me away to the quiet of the mountains on a regular basis, to read, to write, to slow down, to turn off the phone, to listen to the birds, to drink coffee in nature. I love it. My word for 2024 has been balance. And it took me about halfway through the year to start actually seeing it play out. I know that balance is something that we can all only pursue, continue to work towards. And I feel like I'm just slowly finding the path. And now that I'm on the other side of having to choose between a year's worth of rent or buying a truck camper, I have a both and situation. And I love it. I can have my solid home base, somewhere to go home to that I can count on to be there for me and where I can actually cook and do laundry and sit down during the day. And I can also have my beloved tiny house escape pod on wheels so that I can pepper in that off-grid nature time into my daily life, to give me that easy access option of adventure, but in intentional moderation. And that's where the balance comes in. So in the end, in conclusion, I really very highly recommend that anybody out there who's interested in getting your own personal escape pod should absolutely get one for all the good reasons, but Perhaps not at the expense of a home base if it can be avoided, unless you're really, really in a good place and you're in a good heart set and you're in a good mindset for a full-on, full existence adventure. Take my word for it. But yeah, it's an incredible balance having an actual solid place to live and a personal escape pod to just get to choose your adventure, on your own time and maybe not on the days when you're not feeling it. Like that's the beauty of it. So yeah, I feel like I've come a long way in my truck camper life experience, and looking back after, a year, it's been over a year now. I'm so very glad that I said yes to this freaking wild adventure. And I'm also really glad that I don't have to live in it full time anymore. And I would invite any of you who are considering doing it to maybe rent one first and see how it goes, see how you like it. I mean, I had an experience. I went down to Baja on like a 2 or 3 week trip, not in my own truck camper, but it was in a truck camper, and I freaking loved it. I had the best time. It was right before I got my own truck camper. And I mean, that showed me that, yeah, like I've done it for a couple of weeks. I couldn't get enough of it. I didn't want to go back to Montana. Like there were a lot of things that led to me, embarking on this adventure and saying yes to it. And I know it was the right time. And I know that I did it for the right amount of time. And it was the right season for me to do it. And now I get to take the next step, which really I'm going to stay in Montana. I'm renting again, so I'm going to be home based in Montana again. And I will be taking my trips out of Montana as I normally do. We're going to New Zealand later this year. I have several trips that are going to be happening from my home base of Bozeman, Montana. I unfortunately am not going to be able to use the camper here in the winter. It's just too cold, but I do have plans to take it out of state and, get to still enjoy it, because it's like, when you have too much of something and you're kind of like over it, you get burned out, I didn't actually get to that point with the camper. Yes, there were a lot of hard parts about it, but oh my goodness, when I take that out now to the woods, I love spending time in it. I love sleeping in it. It's my home. It's my bed. Like it's not like sleeping in my bed inside is that much different from sleeping in my bed in the camper. I spent enough time in it that it feels like my home. And so when I take it out to the woods, it just feels like an extension of me, like just a different kind of adventure and part of this lifestyle that I've created for myself. And I love it. I really, really do. I'm really, really grateful to be able to have those experiences in moderation, and also this house experience also in moderation. And the rest of the time I'm traveling, it's a really, really nice balance for me. So that actually wraps up the topic for today. I hope that was inspiring and maybe enlightening and insightful for you. I'm happy to help anybody out there navigate a truck camper situation. If you have questions, if you're looking to, learn something or buy one or whatever, hit me up at Traveling Jackie on Instagram. I can definitely have a conversation about it more than what you see here. And like I said, there is a blog post on travelingjackie.com that has some of the stuff that I talked about today is also there's a few blog posts on there about my truck camper experience. So yeah, feel free to check those out if you're interested. And thank you again for tuning in. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much.